Hello and welcome into the Box Out Podcast. This is an NBA podcast covering all things happening in the NBA. Breaking it down week by week is me, Jayden Taylor. If you'd like a little background on me before getting into the nitty-gritty, I did graduate with a journalism degree from Marshall University. That's also where I have some experience calling some basketball on a Division I level. But most importantly, I've been an NBA fan since kindergarten. I've been writing about it since second grade, and I've been talking about it probably since then as well, too. I'm excited to bring this podcast to you, and now let's get into this week's topics. Damian Lillard is finally traded, but not to the Miami Heat, instead to the Milwaukee Bucks. This was done in a three-team deal with the Blazers and Suns. The Suns will receive Grayson Allen as well as Keon Johnson, Nasir Little, and Yusuf Nurkic. The Trailblazers will get DeAndre Ayton, Drew Holiday, Toumani Camara, as well as a 2029 first-round pick and two first-round pick swaps with the Bucks in 2028 and 2030. Now, there's obviously a lot to unpack there, and this is a blockbuster move. That means there's going to be a chain of events from it. Most people's first thought, of course, is does this make the Bucks a title contender? Well, FanDuel has already made them the favorite to win it all at plus 360. Talk about pressure already when we haven't even seen Lillard and Giannis on the same basketball court together yet. First of all, the basketball side of this. Clearly swapping out Grayson Allen and Drew Holiday and some meh picks, which I'll get to in a second, is a nuclear upgrade offensively for the Bucks. They have two people on their team that can go for 40 or 50 on any given night in the playoffs. For a guy like Giannis, who now has two injury-plagued first-round losses to the Heat, this is huge. This gives you, one, a better chance if Giannis is hurt for any amount of time, because, look, I love Drew Holiday and I respect Chris Middleton's game, but neither of them are number one scoring options on a relevant playoff team. Secondly, and clearly, when they are both on the floor together, that should be a problem, a huge problem for defenses. Pick and roll with Giannis and Lillard should be amazing. I mean, Lillard has elite shot-making ability, especially from the three-point lane coming off those pick and rolls. Giannis, clearly a great roller, also good at getting to the basket when he gets the ball in his hands. You have to presume here before the season starts that this will be really, really hard to stop, and this also keeps Giannis in Milwaukee presumably for the next 2 to 3 years. This also moves Chris Middleton down to the third option offensively, which should make him more efficient, and he should fill that role great. He could be in that Klay Thompson role on the Warriors teams with KD and Curry, which I know he's not prime Klay Thompson. He defensively especially, or truthfully even shooting-wise, but you get the point. Now, let's compare the big three that the Bucks have to some other notable big threes around the league. First of all, their Eastern Conference foes, and probably the second favorite in the East is the Boston Celtics. They clearly are still going to have Tatum and Brown, add Kristaps Porzingis. The Celtics team has perimeter defense, should have interior defense, and also have two explosive scorers. But you could argue, of course, that Lillard or Giannis is obviously a more explosive scorer than Jaylen Brown has been, especially if you looked at the last playoff run where they fell short of the Heat in 7. And then take a look at them compared to the Phoenix Suns with KD, Book, and Beal. And so we'll have to wait and see what they all three look like together, but you would have to presume with all that talent that scoring shouldn't be a problem, especially in the regular season. And you would think when things slow down in the playoffs, their issue, of course, is going to be depth, which they hope to have addressed in this trade. And really, after that, I'm not sure if there's a quantifiable big three besides those teams. I mean, you have Jokic and Murray, and then kind of Michael Porter Jr. some nights. Sometimes in the playoffs last year, you could argue the third most important player on the team was Bruce Bowen, or KCP at times, even though he also struggled in the final shooting. There's also the Lakers with LeBron and Anthony Davis and Austin Reeves maybe as that third player. You've got the Sixers with Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and maybe James Harden. We'll have to wait and see on that. The Warriors are going to run it back supposedly with the same group, essentially. Curry, Klay, and Wiggins / Draymond Green. But still, naming all those teams, you can see that the competition is stiff. Now, going to the East certainly helped them better than the West, but still, you're going to have to deal with the Celtics and the Sixers and the Heat. Nothing is guaranteed in this league. Think of any superstar that has joined together with another, and how quick did it take to get a championship? Sometimes you can see a result of a championship in the first year, and that's what happened when the 2007 Celtics joined together as a big three, which in the playoffs wasn't easy either, as they had multiple Game 7s in their climb to win that championship. But then you have the other end of the spectrum, where you have the Miami Heat when LeBron, D-Wade, and Bosh join up together. They lose in that first year in the finals, which, of course, making the finals is great and all, but the goal is a championship, and second place only nets you so much. And so that brings me back full circle to what should the expectations of the Milwaukee Bucks be now that Damian Lillard has joined? And I think that they are Eastern Conference Finals contenders. They're finals contenders. Definitely a top 4 team in the league, but let's wait and see before we go ahead and crown them champions, because they did give up some perimeter defense in Drew Holiday. They did give up some scrappiness in Grayson Allen. You got to imagine that teams are going to want to put Damian Lillard in a lot of pick and roll, especially in the playoffs. Now, where does this leave Drew Holiday? I mean, he can't be in Portland, can he? I mean, there's too far of a disconnect timeline-wise. I mean, Drew Holiday needs to be on a contending team, or at least could make the playoffs somehow and surprise us all, but their goals aren't an NBA championship this season. Plus, there's not really any room for him in the backcourt anyways if you're trying to develop Shaedon Sharpe and Anthony Simons and Scoot Henderson, which I could see a world in which Simons maybe gets shipped out on the way with Holiday to try to get some wing depth, or of course another form of future assets. That leaves us with, well, where could he go, Jayden? Well, there's a couple obvious teams, I think, and to be fair though, Drew Holiday, he could truthfully be useful on every single NBA team, including the Blazers. He could be useful for them, but I know as I'm making the case for him to not be on there, but on the basketball court, he's useful for every NBA team. The Celtics is obviously one that comes to mind as a Celtics fan. The Lakers is another one, obviously. They would love to have a point guard who could play that type of perimeter defense and fill in as that third scoring option on the team with Austin Reeves. I think a funny team that he could be dealt with that would also be amazing would be the Miami Heat, but they kind of run back into the exact same problem they just had with Lillard, which was they really don't want Tyler Hero in return because, as we've already talked about, they have Sharpe, they have Simons, they have Henderson. There's just not enough room for Tyler Hero. And to be honest, Simons is essentially Tyler Hero at this point. Similar contract, same two-guard who his main job is to put the ball in the basket and not really much else. So they really don't want that in return, and they're clearly not getting Bam, and they're clearly not getting Jimmy. So really, what else could they take from the Heat? And that's kind of why I think Lillard ended up going to the Bucks, which brings up a whole new topic of, are we seeing a shift in which the superstar NBA player have as much power while they're still under contract? Remember, Damian Lillard just signed that max extension, and so, to be honest, the Blazers really didn't have to trade him right this second, which of course they wanted to. It's probably better for the franchise to move on and start over with a brand new leaf. But at the same time, and really, you're not forced to trade this player at that given moment like everyone thought was going to happen when we found out that Lillard's preferred team, quote-unquote, was the Miami Heat, or his only team he was going to. And everyone, including myself, pretty much considered it a done deal that Lillard was going to end up on the Heat at a certain point. It was just going to be a matter of how much is it going to take. The Blazers didn't like the deal. They stuck to their guns and got what they believed they should get for Lillard, but from a different team. Now, congratulations to the Blazers for giving Damian Lillard still a chance to compete for a championship just with a different organization, because we've all seen Lillard's career play out. And I think that he's obviously a Hall of Fame borderline player, you would think. I mean, look at some of his incredible performances over the years, and then you look and see, Well, he's never sniffed an NBA Finals. He made the conference finals one year, but kind of a whiff, kind of a goof in and of its sort. Wasn't really that close. And so it's good to see that Lillard has his biggest and best opportunity here to win a championship, and the Blazers delivered on something that they ultimately didn't have to do. The Blazers also getting DeAndre Ayton, who this is a big part of the deal. Ayton gets a fresh start. I mean, we all know the problems that he had with Monty Williams, the head coach, and just was not meshing well with the Suns in general, even last season as well. So him getting a fresh start in Portland with a younger group of guys, probably not going to be getting yelled at by Chris Paul in Portland. So he will get a chance to maybe show his best stuff. At the very least, it's a good opportunity for him and a good swing for the Blazers to take to try to balance out some of their scoring attack. This leaves the Suns part of the deal left to kind of break down. Now, the biggest piece that the Suns walk away with in this deal is Jusuf Nurkic, I would argue, or Grayson Allen, whichever. Nurkic is clearly going to be the starter at center, and I don't know how to feel about this just because, I mean, he literally was teammates with Nikola Jokic, and he literally got shipped out from Denver because Nikola Jokic replaced him. Now, to be fair, no one's Nikola Jokic, and he was at one point, maybe at the start of Jokic's career, better than Jokic, but clearly times have changed, and I just don't see any universe in which Nurkic is going to keep up with Jokic. I'm not certain if there is a guy out there who does that, but at the very least, you would think DeAndre Ayton offers a little bit more athleticism and offers a little bit more defense than Nurkic. But Nurkic is a gamer. He puts up some gaudy numbers sometimes, a la to Enes Kanter, I would compare. But Nurkic, maybe he can be sheltered some by this defense, and maybe he can provide exactly the role that the Suns need. Grayson Allen and Keon Johnson and Nasir Little, just some wing pieces. Allen, obviously known for his role on the Milwaukee Bucks the last 2 seasons, has that starter at the 2 for them, but he will mostly be playing behind Booker, Beal, and Eric Gordon's in the mix as well, so you gotta wonder just how much does he affect the game when playoff times come. Of course, you're going to need some bench guys, and if injuries happen, then he'll be there to fill that role. And that's really what they needed, but, again, it's not something exciting, not something huge. It's more so just trying to fill in those gaps on the bench and get a little bit of our culture reset with getting Ayton out of the building and bringing in Nurkic. Ultimately, I think the Suns' championship odds improve, but not by a lot, which makes this deal, technically at least, in my opinion, a 3-way deal that's good for each party. It's not often that all 3 teams walk away, you think, with a good side of the deal, but at least from my vantage point, all 3 phases of it are good for what each team needs, even if that means you're the Blazers flipping Holiday for more future assets. Where does this trade, this 3-way trade between the Bucks, Heat, and Suns, leave the Heat? Because they've been extremely inactive this past summer on the market, and maybe they thought that the Blazers would eventually cave and that they could get Lillard, but they've been burned pretty badly here, in a sense. And if they can't get Drew Holiday or somebody else, that raises the question, what the heck is going on over there between Pat Riley and Andy Ellsberg, the GM of the Heat? Because right now, you've lost Gabe Vincent, who's a starter, you lost Max Strus, and you've added Josh Richardson. So, not exactly going all in on your finals appearance. Now, second one in the past few seasons. Who could the Heat end up with? I mean, Pascal Siakam has been thrown around, but I don't know how well he really pairs with Bam Adebayo. There's also been Zach LaVine thrown around for about 2 years now in trade conversations. There's DeMar DeRozan, but again, how well does that work with Jimmy Butler on the same floor as him spacing-wise. There's James Harden. Now, that would be hilarious if James Harden somehow ended up in Miami, but I just don't know if he really fits the Heat culture, but certainly he would love Miami nightlife, I'm sure. Regardless, they can't stay pat and run this roster back and expect to beat the Bucks and the Celtics, or maybe even the 76ers as well, as much of a catastrophe in the playoffs they have been. So let's get ourselves acclimated with how the NBA season is going to start and when. October 3rd is when NBA training camps open, and October 5th is when NBA preseason games begin. It will be October 5th and 7th that the NBA plays in Abu Dhabi. It will be the Dallas Mavericks taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves. So kind of crazy to see history happening there with NBA being played in Abu Dhabi. Then the Raptors and Kings are playing on October 8th in Vancouver, Canada. On October 10th, Dallas Mavericks and the Real Madrid team will be playing in preseason game in Madrid, Spain. As well as October 12th, the Thunder will be playing the Pistons in Montreal, Canada. Of course, there will be some other preseason games mingled in between, but those are some of the cool international things happening. Then the NBA regular season will start on October 24th with the Lakers on the road at the Denver Nuggets and the Phoenix Suns on the road at the Golden State Warriors. Now, if you've made it this far into the podcast, one, I appreciate you. I know that, it's not been an hour listen or anything like that, but I do appreciate the listen to this point, and I really don't want to start out by giving you an hour-long podcast. One, because I'm kind of learning as I'm going. I've never truthfully hosted a solo show like this. But here I am, and I'm going to give my opinions, and we're going to try this through the NBA season. We're going to rock out with it. Expect me checking in with you guys on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and maybe for some emergency pods, or if things get hectic, maybe we'll switch around the schedule. We'll see how the season goes, but right now we're going Tuesdays and Thursdays. And for the next episode, or any episodes, I'll always take listener suggestions. So if you have something that you want to hear me talk about this upcoming NBA season, leave a comment. You will always be able to catch this podcast on Spotify Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and on YouTube on the Hotspot Sports Network YouTube page. That's a network that I'm creating, has a platform for anyone to start a podcast on, and there is a good possibility you may see a UFC podcast on there sometime soon, and you may see my face and voice on it. That'll do it for me here on the Box Out Podcast. Cue the music.